so many of you have asked for a deep dive into Jade's Law and how it came to be.
Yeah.
And it is such a fascinating case of, turning personal tragedy into sweeping legal change.
Mm-hmm.
So to recap, Jade's Law basically says that if you are convicted of murdering your partner,
Right.
you no longer have any say in your children's lives.
It's an automatic suspension of parental rights.
And this law is specific to the UK.
Yes.
But it makes you wonder, like, how many families had to suffer through this legal limbo before this change was finally made.
I mean, we're seeing a growing recognition that a parent's rights aren't absolutely exactly.
Right. Times when
it comes to the safety of the child.
Right, to safety and well-being.
Yeah.
Supersedes.
It supersedes, yeah.
The right of the parent, especially when that surviving parent,
if they are a danger,
poses a direct threat. Yeah, and so to really understand the impact of Jade's Law, we need to go back to August 2021 to the murder of Jade Ward by her husband, Russell Marsh.
Right.
And there's a 2024 documentary called The Murder of Jade Ward True Crime Documentary.
Right.
And that gives a really chilling account of their 10-year relationship.
Yes, very disturbing.
And it really shows kind of a pattern of coercive control.
Mm-hmm.
And for listeners who might not be familiar with that term, coercive control is a form of domestic abuse where the abuser basically uses tactics like intimidation and isolation and constant monitoring to exert power over their partner. And the documentary shows that, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Russell.
There was a lot of possessiveness,
Checking up on her,
and even using Snapchat to
track her location. Yeah.
It paints a picture of someone who's just obsessed with control.
It's very frightening.
Yeah.
And tragically, Jade's attempts to break free from this relationship came too late.
Yes.
The day before she was murdered, she told Russell that she was done.
And he was not having that.
And the documentary highlights something that really gave me chills. They have some CCTV footage of Russell's car near Jade's house the night of the murder.
Oh, wow.
He was most likely watching her and her friends, unable to accept that she was moving on.
That speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It's so chilling.
The obsessive nature of this type of abuser.
Yeah.
That inability to accept the loss of control.
Right.
Oh.
And then, of course, the brutality of the act itself.
Yeah.
Russell entered Jade's house while their 4 young sons were asleep.
Oh my God.
Stabbed her multiple times and suffocated her.
Horrible.
And to make matters even worse, during the investigation and the trial, Russell showed absolutely no remorse for what he had done.
That's common, isn't it?
Sadly, yeah.
A hallmark of these cases. That
it's like he just didn't.
That inability
grasp it.
To even grasp the magnitude of their actions.
Or even care.
And the devastation that they've caused.
Yeah. So amidst all of this grief and tragedy,
Yeah.
Jade's parents, Karen and Paul,
Right.
they were hit with yet another hurdle.
Oh my God.
In this nightmare. They discovered that Russell, even though he was behind bars,
Right.
could still exert legal control over his children.
Yeah.
And this realization sparked outrage.
Oh, yeah.
Not just within the family.
But in the community as well.
But in the community at large. And this is where Edwin Duggan, a family friend, steps into the story.
Yeah.
Now, was he a lawyer?
The sources don't really go into detail about his background.
Right.
But his actions speak for themselves.
Absolutely.
I mean, he helped to channel the family's grief and their disbelief into this powerful force for change. And he spearheaded the campaign for what we now know as Jade's Law.
Right. So we've talked about the tragic loss of Jade and the legal complexities that the family face.
Right.
But how did this movement for Jade's Law gain such momentum?
Well, it was a true grassroots effort, really.
Yeah.
Duggan launched this petition demanding a change in the law, and it just took off.
Yeah.
It gained so much traction, over 100,000 signatures.
Wow.
In just 9 days.
That's incredible.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah, that's the power of social media, right?
It really is the power of collective action. They call themselves Team Jade.
I love that.
And they were relentless. I mean, they were out there distributing flyers, giving interviews, using social media to spread awareness.
Yeah.
And the sheer volume of support, it forced a debate in Parliament.
Right.
It put this issue on the national agenda.
So I'm sure the government wasn't too happy about that.
Well, there was pushback. especially from the Ministry of Justice. Their initial argument was that implementing this kind of law would just be too complex.
Too complex.
Too many moving parts.
But how can it be too complex when you're talking about the safety of children?
Well, you would think.
Yeah.
That the safety and well-being of these kids would outweigh any sort of bureaucratic concerns.
Red tape.
But unfortunately, that's often the reality, isn't it?
Yeah.
With these large systems.
Yeah.
It can be difficult to make real change quickly, even when it seems like the right thing to do.
Right. And Edwin Duggan didn't give up.
No, he didn't.
He actually appealed directly to the Prime Minister.
He did.
Asking him to put himself in Jade's parents' shoes.
Yeah, and that's a powerful...
Gotta hit hard.
It is a powerful message, isn't it? I mean, it cuts through all the red tape, and it reminds those in power that their decisions have real-world consequences.
And that these are real people that are being affected.
Yeah. Put yourself in the position of these parents who've not only lost their daughter, but are now fighting to protect their grandchildren from her murderer.
Right. It's unimaginable.
It is.
And so in a surprise move at the Conservative conference, the government announced that Jade's law would be enacted.
Amazing.
Can you imagine, like...
It's a victory.
Feeling of... I don't know, validation, but also just grief.
Relief. Vindication, but also bittersweet.
Bittersweet.
Knowing that it came at such a high cost.
Such a terrible cost.
Yeah.
But what a testament to their perseverance.
Yeah, it is.
And Edwin Duggan's dedication.
Absolutely.
But it does raise an interesting question.
Go on.
You know, we're talking about the UK.
Yeah.
Jade's law is specific to the UK.
Right.
What about other countries? Do their legal systems offer similar protections?
That's a good question.
For children in these situations?
Yeah. Are there other countries that have similar laws in place?
Right. And that's something for our listeners to think about. You know, where do you live? What are the laws in your area? But the story doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't.
Edwin Duggan continues to work.
His commitment to helping families.
It's really remarkable.
In similar situations is incredible. I mean, he's become a voice for the voiceless. Using his experience and expertise to navigate this complex legal system.
Right.
And to advocate for others.
You mentioned Shay's case earlier.
Oh, yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that. That one really stuck with me.
Yes. So Shay was a young girl, only 10 years old.
Right.
And her mother was arrested for her murder.
Oh, gosh.
And the family was facing a real uphill battle to gain control of Shay's affairs.
Yeah, because legally, the mother still had parental rights.
Exactly, even though she was the accused.
It's chilling.
It is a reminder that even with laws like Jade's law, there are still families out there
that need help,
who need support and advocacy to make sure that the children are protected and that justice is served.
So thankfully, Edwin Duggan was there to help in Shay's case as well.
He provided legal expertise and unwavering support to her family.
And I think that's what's so inspiring about him, is that it's not just these individual cases.
Right.
You know, he's working on a bigger level as well.
He goes beyond the individual cases.
Yeah.
He doesn't just campaign for change.
Yeah.
He helps to implement it.
Yeah, he's known for drafting legal language.
He does.
To make it easier for lawmakers to put these changes into action.
It bridges that gap between advocating for change and actually implementing it.
Yes.
Which can be a real challenge.
Absolutely.
In these complex systems.
And his work with We Stand is another great example of that. Tell me about We Stand. They advocate for victims of domestic abuse who are trying to protect their children from abusers who still legally have parental rights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just highlights that this fight extends, you know, beyond these individual cases.
It's systemic.
It's about the system.
Yeah.
And making sure that the legal framework is actually there.
It protects the vulnerable.
To protect those who are most vulnerable.
Yeah, and for listeners who want to learn more about Edwin Duggan's work, his website is a great resource.
It is.
www.edwinduggan.co.uk.
Lots of information there.
Yeah, it's really a treasure trove of information and resources. But, you know, taking a step back, what does Jade's story and Edwin Duggan's work tell us about the power of one person to make a difference?
Well, I think it's a powerful reminder that change often starts with a single voice, with a single act of courage.
From one family's unimaginable heartbreak to a nationwide movement,
Yes.
it shows that personal stories can really ignite collective action.
And lead to lasting change.
And it's not just about legislation, right?
No.
It's about raising awareness,
Absolutely.
changing attitudes,
Shifting those societal attitudes.
providing support for families going through this.
It's about creating a whole ecosystem of support.
And the impact of Jade's Law.
Goes way beyond the courtroom.
It does. It's sparked conversations. It's led to reforms. It's empowered people to demand better protection for children.
It's a real legacy.
It is.
For Jade.
It honors her memory, and it offers hope to others.
I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah.
Jade's story is a reminder that even in the face of tragedy, there's hope.
There is.
For justice, for change, and for a future where children are protected.
So from those who would do them harm.
Yes. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
Into the story of Jade's Law. We hope this has given you a better understanding of the events that led to this important legislation.
Yes.
And the incredible people.
The people who made it happen.
Yeah. And remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
By sharing these stories, engaging in these conversations.
Right.
We can continue to raise awareness and advocate for change.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.